Welcome, Rich Hoops Pod fans. The Los Angeles Lakers offseason was filled with a lot of drama from the get-go. The moment their season concluded, LeBron James said that he was contemplating retirement. I got a lot to think about, to be honest. And just for me, personally going forward, with the game of basketball, I got a lot to think about. Now we debunk that almost immediately because, well, LeBron James has been saying to a nauseating degree how much he wishes to play with his son, Bronny James. What do you need to do in your career before you can hang it up? I need to build a floor with my boy. I got to be on the floor, LeBron. Now, one of my favorite things that occurs the moment the NBA draft concludes, especially the 2023 NBA draft, which, by the way, had record-setting numbers, in terms of viewership as a result of Victor Wembanyama, because he is the greatest NBA prospect that we have ever seen since LeBron James. But next year, we already know what type of draft it's going to be. It's going to be a completely different type of draft with different narratives and storylines that we're already covering right now. And that's the fact that LeBron James said repeatedly that whatever team elects his son, Bronny James will also get LeBron James, which I'm very interested in seeing how that's going to shake out. LeBron also mentioned that there's a chance that Bronny might not want to play with his dad, which I understand. So currently, as it stands in this way too early mock draft from ESPN and SportsCenter, and bear in mind, this is a mock draft, the Atlanta Hawks are set to take Bronny James with the 17th overall pick in the NBA draft. The crazy part about this is LeBron took this mock draft by ESPN, posted it onto his story, and quite literally said, well, Atlas Shotty, the James gang will be pulling up, with obviously a bunch of laugh emojis. I think this is a very realistic spot for Bronny. By the way, I think it makes sense. And the crazy part is Trae Young quite literally replied to the saying, talk soon. Oh, keep an eye out on that, because I'm sure there's a lot of teams that might draft Bronny just for the sake of having LeBron for a year. That aside, there's one thing for sure. Los Angeles Lakers get LeBron James for one more season. And originally, our hypothesis was that LeBron James was contemplating retirement as a means of pressuring the front office of the Los Angeles Lakers to potentially pursue a big star to team up with himself and Anthony Davis. LeBron James looked at Anthony Davis and realized, hey, this guy can't carry the load in addition to me, and he can't pick up my slack. So we might need another star like, I don't know, Kyrie Irving. But here's the problem. If the Los Angeles Lakers pursue Kyrie Irving's going to want a max contract, obviously, despite him not having much of a market outside of the Dallas Mavericks. So this would handicap the Los Angeles Lakers significantly. They'd be able to keep Austin Reeves, but you can say goodbye to D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, Mo Bamba, Malik Beasley. And in place of those players, you'll get, I don't know, Jabari Parker, Stanley Johnson. You could bring Dwight Howard back from Taiwan, those types of players. And given the fact that the Phoenix Suns are already opting for that option, which, by the way, we really need to get you an update on that because it's looking very interesting. Over in Phoenix, it clearly isn't the way that I believe basketball teams should be built, and given the fact that the Los Angeles Lakers attempted to do this 2 years ago when they quite literally gutted out all of their depth and traded Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and their first-round draft pick, which was very valuable, by the way, to the Washington Wizards for Russell Westbrook, and then had Russell Westbrook on a super maximum contract with LeBron James and Anthony Davis on max contracts. We could all agree that that was a huge failure. And no, it's nothing to do with Russell Westbrook. It's just the Lakers had a combination of two things that just didn't work out for them. One was the fact that the trio of LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook just never worked from the very beginning. Frank Vogel couldn't make it work. Darvin Ham tried to make it work. He couldn't make it work either. There were good gains for Russell Westbrook. Don't get me wrong, but the spacing was messed up because Russ isn't that great a three-point shooter. And then, on top of that, since there was so much money allocated to a big three that doesn't work, you had a really, really terrible bench. And that's the reason why it didn't work. And that's why Russ had some more success with the Clippers. You can't compare Russell Westbrook on a supermax contract to Russell Westbrook on a veteran minimum contract on a very deep team. The Rob Pelinka clearly had this in his mind because very shortly during his exit interview, Rob Pelinka showed his hand and he said what the Lakers plan on doing. Our intentions are to keep our core of young guys together. And I think we saw incredible growth and achievement by, Rui, Austin. I could go down the list, Vando Delo. We have a lot of great young players, and we want to do our best to fit the puzzle together. Now, here's where it gets so interesting. There's a huge question about what the Lakers want to do with D'Angelo Russell. Look, guys, you know me. When it comes to my analysis, I like to think I'm fairly unbiased, especially in my take on D'Angelo Russell. So I have nothing but appreciation for Dula. When we traded for him, what Rob Pelinka did during the trade deadline, as a Laker fan, was nothing short of wizardry. You took a team that barely worked together. That didn't necessarily make sense playing together. We traded away Damian Jones, Juan Toscano Anderson, Patrick Beverley, Thomas Bryan, Kendrick Nunn, and Russell Westbrook. And in return, you got back D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, Mo Bamba, and Rui Hachimura. This completely changed the Los Angeles Lakers season. Just from the standpoint of D'Angelo Russell being able to space out the floor, this was fantastic. The Lakers were able to make it to the Western Conference Finals, and this is despite this unit having about 2 to 3 months with one another. And bear in mind, a large portion of those months were games where LeBron James was injured. So a lot of the reason why the Lakers got to the playoffs, to begin with, was the fact that this team was able to pick up the slack when LeBron James was injured. In my opinion, that warrants at least a full off season with one another to get familiar with each other. Because if they were able to make it to the Western Conference Finals with that little familiarity with one another, I think it's definitely worth continuing forward. Despite this, D'Angelo Russell had a horrific Western Conference Finals. I mean, he was mean for this. A lot of Laker fans were saying D'Angelo Russell was the reason why we lost to the Denver Nuggets. He had a remarkable first round versus the Grizzlies, but against the Golden State Warriors and the Denver Nuggets, not so much. Russell went from averaging 17 points per game and hitting 41 of his threes to averaging 11.5 points per game and 3.9 assists per game, while making 42 of all of his field goals. You couple that with the fact that there was drama about potentially bringing D'Angelo Russell off of the bench in the playoffs, and you get a recipe for the Lakers, planning on potentially moving on from him. They tried to explore a sign in trade with Kyrie Irving, but the Mavericks weren't interested. In that, they also tried to explore a sign in trade with Fred VanVleet. But we got a huge update on what the Los Angeles Lakers free agency plan is, and it's coming from a very reputable source in The Athletic. So, according to this article, Lakers Vice President Basketball Operations and General Manager Rob Pelinka echoed on Tuesday the Lakers' plan for free agency. Yeah, I think, we're at the doorstep of free agency, and we've been pretty clear since our last game with the success of making it to the Western Conference Finals. We want to try our hardest to keep this core of guys together and also improve around the edges and on the margins to not only get back to where we were last year, but hopefully take the next step, get into the NBA Finals. The article even says it here. What we were saying earlier, for the first time in the LeBron, James Anthony Davis era, the Lakers are expected to prioritize continuity and chemistry over chasing flashier upgrades this offseason. Now that sounds like a great plan in my opinion, but that could always change based on the Lakers' track record and how the rest of free agency plays out. But all indications, both publicly and privately, point to the organization planning to re-sign restricted free agents Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura, and unrestricted free agent D'Angelo Russell. As The Athletic previously reported, the Lakers are also expected to try to retain unrestricted free agent Dennis Schroeder and Lonnie Walker IV, though they don't have full Berg-Ruts on either. The Lakers will continue to operate under the assumption that LeBron James will be back next season, even though there has been no formal announcement since his final press conference in May, when he said that there was a lot to think about regarding his future. This is what gives me a lot of optimism here. Rob Pelinka said that the franchise believes in the proof of concept of the roster, despite the group being together for less than 2 months. That stretch included James Davis and Russell, each missing chunks of the regular season. The Lakers finished the season 18-6, including the regular season play and tournament, and first 2 rounds of the playoffs, en route to their first conference finals berth since 2020. I've said this many times in previous uploads, man. This season reminded me a lot of the Lakers' 2007 to 2008 season when they were in a very similar position. They had a bunch of players around the lake, grade Kobe Bryant. That didn't make them competitive at all whatsoever, to the point where Kobe Bryant was actually flirting with teams in the offseason prior. And then out of nowhere, somehow, some way through some stroke of wizardry, they were able to trade for Paul Gasol. And upon receiving Paul Gasol came in, learned the triangle offense really, really quickly, which is very complicated to learn, especially in the middle of the season. And the Lakers were able to make it all the way to the NBA Finals. Although they would lose to the Boston Celtics, this is a very similar result. It's very obvious that this team works well together. An 18-6 record, including the regular season playing tournament, and the first 2 rounds of the playoffs is very, very impressive. I don't think you could upgrade even more than that. All you need is time together. We saw defensively what we were able to do to finish the season out. Plank has said, I think defense and rebounding wins championships, and that's the core of Dartmouth's system and our identity. We want to lean into that. I think if there are ways that we can improve the roster, of course, we're going to do that. Depending on the way the Lakers choose to build out their roster, it will either have the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is $12.4 million, and the taxpayer mid-level exception, which is about $5 million, or the room exception projected to be about $7.7 million. That will be available. They can use that to re-sign their own players who do not have bird rights, like Dennis Schroeder and or Lonnie Walker, or sign a player or players that fills another position or need. They could also acquire a player and sign and trade, though that would force them to operate with a hard cap of about $7 million over the luxury tax line. We're going to try our best to match players with players that coach wants to coach, and that work in his system. And I think that's guys that play tough-mind basketball, that play defense and play the game the right way, and hold themselves accountable, but fit within a team structure. That don't put themselves first, but put other guys first. That's got to be our identity, and it will be our identity. And I think when rosters really work is when they reflect the personality of the head coach. And those are the archetypes and the things that we are on for, that we are for on July 1st. I've said this before, man. The Los Angeles Lakers lost to a team that has been together, at least their core has been together, for at the very minimum, you could say, since Michael Porter Jr. got drafted since 2018, this team has been together for a very long time, making it into the playoffs, getting knocked out in the playoffs, suffering heartbreaks, suffering through injuries. And finally, by the time the Denver Nuggets faced off against Los Angeles Lakers, they were running circles around them. They had their two-time MVP Nikola Jokic. They had the perfect complementary player to him, in Jamal Murray. They had a literal microwave on the wing that has tremendous all-star potential in Michael Porter Jr. And as before, I get to their role players, man, like Bruce Brown, for instance, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Aaron Gordon, Jeff Green. So I think that's the blueprint to follow. If you want to win a championship at this point, the idea of just constructing a team out of nowhere and free agency, in my opinion, is relatively outdated and has already failed us in the past. And I think the Lakers are making the right decision here.